And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
One of my favorite games that I played as a child was Guess Who. I got it when I was around 10, played it maybe close to 100 times, enjoyed the logic of guessing who the other player's suspect was, using questions to eliminate people. I really enjoyed it, but it kind of faded out over time because we kept using the same people, and it got a little too simplistic as I got older. I thought, nah, it's just too easy. Ask a question, eliminate people, ask a question, eliminate people. Who's the first person to ask the lucky questions? Still, though, I remember that memory of it, and so when the new version came out, Electronic Guess Who, I was intrigued by it. Not necessarily because it was electronic, although that sounds cool, but because it's called Electronic Guess Who Extra. This is all that I have of the game. There is a box, but I don't need the box anymore because everything is contained in this case here, which splits apart like so, and then one person plays on one side, they're the red team, the other person plays on the other side, and they are the blue team. If you've never played Guess Who before, basically you have a bunch of suspects there. You can see them, and you pick one of them. This person here picked William. The other player is going to do the same thing, and then they have all these little flippers down here with one of each suspect down here below, and they're going to ask a question trying to guess who the other person is. For example, you can say, does your character have brown hair? And then they might say no. So you would go throughout here and click down all the ones that have brown hair. And by process of elimination, eventually you get to one person and you ask them and they say yes or no. Now, the game itself is electronic, as I said. You turn it on and it's very simple. You ask someone a question, instead of saying yes, they simply press the button. And it makes some kind of weird sound that just means yes. Same thing for no, instead of saying no or yes. Now, really, at first you might think, is that really that big of a deal? I can actually say the words yes or no. Well, right. Well, there's more than that. You can press the button in the middle to determine, put a timer on the game. So when you start, you press one of the buttons. The color of this blinking light will tell you whose turn it is. And you hear that sound in the background telling you how much time you have left. So you ask a question. The person says yes or no. The color changes to the other person's. And then they have to ask a question. And you only have so much time. It really does give you a reasonable amount of time. And let me turn this off here so we don't hear this annoying beep in the background. It gives you a reasonable amount of time, but even in the fastest game, I still found it with plenty of time, plenty of ease in which to answer the questions. So the time method's okay. But let's look at the extras parts of the game. When you open up the side here, each side comes off or can open up, it shows you have different suspect lists. This is the normal one that I showed you, but there's also one here with a bunch of kids, and they have some more unusual characteristics like green hair. And then there is another one here with more cartoony. They look like they came from Mad Magazine. And on the back, different appliances or other things that you might find around the house. And then there's animals, a card with animals, and then there's a card with monsters. Now, interestingly enough, each of these cards, there's 2 copies, one for each player, but the suspect order is not the same. My suspects here, they're in a different position on the other card. So if the other player sees you slide yours across in the middle, he can look at his card and that's not necessarily who is in the middle. And so there's at least some give and take there, and that's just a small touch that I found really nice. The game also comes with these little pegs. You can see them sitting here, plugged in the side. You can play a variant where you take one of these pegs and put it at different suspects, people that you think the opponent is going to pick. If you guess their person, you get an extra point. Because a game isn't guessing the other person's suspect, it's guessing it and getting a point, and then they guess and get a point, and the first person to get a certain amount of points is the winner. The whole thing works pretty well. When you set it down, like this, these flip forward pretty easily. You can just open your thing, drop it out like that, and they all open up. These sliders work pretty well, and the cards fit in here easily. The cards and the rules, everything fits in the game really well. There's also a variant in the game where instead of picking one person, you can pick 2 different people. Now that makes the game, to me, really intriguing because your questions have a completely different flair when that comes across. For example, I can say, does either of your suspects have black hair? Do either of your suspects, are both of your suspects women? And there's a whole lot more involved there, and asking a question doesn't necessarily mean I can put it down because I might eliminate black hair on one of their suspects, but on the other. And for adults, that makes the game much more challenging. These pegs can be used as a kind of a byline there, and I really enjoy the game in that regard. That being said, while that game is good for adults, the original game is really great for kids. They're really going to like the artwork. They'll like some of this artwork better than others. You can ask different questions, different monsters here, or maybe even here with the appliances. What room in the house is it? Can I see it right now? Different things like that, and that really, to me, adds a lot of variety to the game. Because I was pretty content as a child with just one group of suspects. Now there's 6 different groups, and there's different ways to play, and there's that electronic thing, which, while honestly is wholly unnecessary, does add an element of intrigue for kids. They'll like pressing the buttons and hearing the funny sounds. All in all, it's an excellent package, one I can play with my kids and have a fun time just playing a simple basic game with them, or one I can play with someone else on a much more higher level because of having the 2 different suspects. And for that, I think the game is great. It's certainly worth checking out. If you like simple logic games, then Guess Who Electronic Extra is for you.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.